What's going on, everyone, and welcome to episode 182 of the Junkies Podcast. I am your host, Jason Becker. Today I'm chatting with Alex Siebert, aka Crapout Welds on Instagram. Alex has a diverse background when it comes to welding. He works on everything from aerospace parts to junkyard repairs and everything in between. He's a super cool dude, and I had the opportunity to meet him a few years ago out in San Diego while we were delivering the grill for Sam the Cooking Guy. Before we get into the episode, I want to tell you about some of the great products available from the supporters of the show. Today's episode of the Junkies Podcast is brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. I know I've told you in the past about their amazing rods and wires for maintenance welding and repair work, and maybe that doesn't apply to your line of work and what you got going on in your shop. But I know you're all out there grinding, cutting, and drilling at some point. That's like 80% of what we do as welders is fabricate and prep for welding. Check out rockmountwelding.com and click on the Our Products tab and scroll down to the abrasives and metalworking section. They have a full section of chop saw blades, burr bits, drill bits, and abrasives. I've been using their grinding and cut-off wheels along with their 2-inch sanding pads, and these things are tough. You'll definitely get your money's worth with these products. Yes, they're going to cost a little bit more than the stuff you'll find at the big box stores, but let's face it, you get what you pay for. Get the job done right the first time with Rockmount and stop messing around with discounted abrasives and bits. Be sure to give them a follow on Instagram at Rockmount Welding and tell them the Junkie sent you. We're also brought to you by Everlast Welders. I get a lot of questions from listeners about what equipment they should buy. And it all boils down to, what do you want to do with the equipment and where are you going to be running it? Now, most of these people are just starting out doing side work or just trying to build up their skill set. They want a good performing, reliable machine, but they don't want to break the bank to get it, and they also don't want something that's bottom of the barrel. If you find yourself in a similar situation, stop by and check out my buddies over at everlastwelders.com. They have a machine for every skill level and every budget. Currently, I'm running the Everlast 255 EXT and my Cyclone 200E. Neither of the machines have let me down, and they're super simple to set up and operate. Head on over to everlastwelders.com and get your next machine today. Make sure to use Junkies in the comments section when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal, and you'll get that free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch. It's a $100 upgrade. We're also brought to you by Fronius USA. And for the next couple of weeks, they have a great deal for listeners of the Junkies Podcast. Right now, when you buy a Trans Pocket 180, you get a free welding jacket and a pair of gloves. The Trans Pocket 180 is a wireless DC TIG and stick machine, meaning you don't have to plug the machine in while you're welding. You just charge it up at home and take it on the go. This machine is completely portable and weighs only 19.6 pounds. If you can get the machine to the work, you can weld it. No need to worry about an outlet or an extension cord. The Transpocket 180 is powerful enough to run 532nd electrodes, and it also has a cellulose mode for running 6010. It also comes with a hard side case on wheels to store the machine and the accessories. Now you have the ability to weld remotely, whether it's on a job site, at the hunting camp, inside of a restaurant, or out on the trail. The sky's the limit with this machine. All you have to do to take advantage of this great offer is head on over to shopweldingsupplies.com/ArcJunkie and put the machine, gloves, and jacket in your cart and use Junkies in the discount box at checkout. And the jacket and gloves are yours for free. And if that wasn't enough, they also offer free shipping. Take advantage of this great deal now through the end of July. All right, you know what time it is. Fire up your machines, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Junkies Podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
All right, Alex, man, thanks for coming on the show. It's been quite a while since we've seen each other.
Yeah, I think 2019 was the last time we talked.
Yeah, got to meet up at Not Tacos, hanging out there with Sam the Cooking Guy. That was a pretty insane trip all the way around.
I'm sure it was for you because you had to go all the way from Florida, and then you went up and saw A-Bomb, and then you came out here. But like going down there, like I never go down to San Diego.
Right.
Never. It's like 45 minutes from my house, but it's like there's just no reason to go down there. But going down there to that place, I've heard of it, but I've never been there, and I've been a big fan of that, dude. Yeah, it was great. I got to go back down there again. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I guess Sam's pretty famous in your neck of the woods, not just because YouTube. I guess he's had like different cooking shows on that side of town, or out in that area, and then like he's opened up 2 restaurants now. I think 3. He's getting ready to open up a 3rd.
Yeah, I remember like in middle school growing up, and he used to be on this what's it called? This radio show I think it was every Monday. And he'd come on, he'd talk about recipes. He'd have like, all right, here's 3 dishes. Which one do you want me to explain? And then whatever, they pick one, and then he explains how to cook these dishes. And he was pretty funny and blah, blah. And then my dad got into him because of his YouTube videos. And I've just always known about this dude. And it was crazy to actually meet him, even though he's so local.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wild.
And he seems like and that's the kind of cool thing, because like our camera guy, Todd, he was like, Sam is like his hero. And so I was hoping, because they always say like you shouldn't meet the people that you idolize or the people that you kind of hold up to that high regard, because they're usually not the same person, in person as they are on like video or radio or anything like that. Like they say you should never meet your heroes, and Sam seemed to be the same type of dude on camera as he is off camera. So it was really cool to see that he wasn't like a total dick when we got there, because a lot of times you get that. You're like, oh man, this person's super cool or super humble, and then you just meet him in person, and then they gaff you off. He was like 100% just a really cool, down to earth person.
Yeah, or you meet your heroes, and they're like, this guy's like my dad. Like,
yeah.
Like not even that cool. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, he was super cool, dude. We got to eat over. We actually came back to San Diego like one more time. We went out to Workshops for Warriors. And then because we were in the area, we had to, we were like, oh shit, Sam just opened up his new restaurant, Gray's. We got to pop in over there and check that out, because like I said, he's super cool, and the camera guy's a huge fan of him. So as soon as we got into town, we're like, hey man, you want to meet up? And he's like, yeah, come on out to the new restaurant. So he's got some pretty good food in there.
What's his new restaurant all about?
It's Gray's, and it's literally across the street from Not Tacos, or like across the porch. And it's just
in Little Italy.
Yeah.
Still?
Well, no, it's opposite side of Little Italy. So if you walk out the front door, not street side, but like the courtyard side, you just literally walk across the courtyard. It's right over there on the other side. And it's just like kind of like samplers. So like, I guess Gray's, you're just like sampling a bunch of different things, and he's got a bunch of different craft beers and stuff in there. So it was pretty good.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I got to go check that out. Like I said, I don't go down to San Diego. It's a nightmare, dude. I can't stand cities.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan.
LA, if I have to go up to LA, I'm not stoked about it. Like the driving is horrible. It's hard to navigate. Everything's just so compact. Like my sister lives up in San Francisco, and sometimes I'll go up there, and it's like I refuse to drive up there because I don't want to have to deal with a car up there. It's just way better just to walk around and stuff like that. But luckily San Diego, like sometimes we'll go to the Padre game down there. Mm-hmm. There's a train that's right next to me. We just pop on that, get hammered on the way down there. Don't have to worry about it. Go to the Padre game, then take the train back, and it's pretty rad.
Oh, that's not too bad then.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
I heard it like San Diego's going downhill pretty quick, because like their homeless population's getting out of control, and like they're kind of promoting, dude, being homeless, and they've got all kinds of new rights and stuff that. I mean, tell me if this is true, because like I'm over here on the East Coast. I only know about it from what I hear on like Rogan and other people talk about it, but there's an app that you can log in where there's like human feces on the street, so that the city will come and clean it up, hopefully.
I've heard of that. It's actually, what's crazy is that like, you hear about this kind of like, oh, the homeless population's kind of blowing up and stuff like that. You kind of hear about it, but it's crazy because you can actually see it. Mm-hmm. Like even the area I live in isn't very like, it's technically San Diego County. Okay. But it's North County. It's kind of a way. It's in between San Clemente and San Diego. I don't know. It's a weird location. We don't really have like deal with San Diego stuff. Don't deal with LA stuff. It's just kind of like its own thing. But even in this area, it is so heavily populated with homeless now. Like every single like exit, they have camps right by my work. Like it's like they're not even hiding it anymore. Mm-hmm. Like it's not like how they usually go under overpasses and stuff like that. It's just crazy how that whole thing when the homeless population started getting big, like it was like, oh shit, there it is. It's right in front of your face. Like, what are we going to do about it? But what's interesting is that I'm doing some side work for someone who's building a bunch of tiny homes that the city's purchasing, and they're putting them on lots. So they'll put like 100 of these tiny homes on lots, and they don't have bathrooms. They have a shower and like a sink and stuff, but I think there's a communal bathroom, like a toilet, or the homeless people to come in and actually stay, so they're not on the streets and stuff like that.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a pretty good idea.
That's mostly like in our area, like over here in Orlando. I think most of the homeless population, they camp out in the woods. So I mean, you see them in the day walking around, but we don't have like massive tent cities. Like when we went to Houston, we went to like the southwest side, and getting back on the interstate, you could see just up underneath the freeways, like all the tents and everything set up, like almost like a park. And it was just, littered with tents and homeless people. And it's like, damn, man, you really don't, because I don't see it a whole lot here, like the camps and stuff. You're like, damn, it's kind of like, it's a different way of life out there.
There's a community.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. Like, like at least, if the gets worse comes to worse and something bad happened, you know where to go.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good part, I guess. But
yeah.
So how'd you end up teaming up and getting side work with building tiny homes?
So a good buddy of mine who actually got me into welding, he started a company, and a welding company, fabrication and stuff like that. And we kind of started doing, like the first job I ever had was repairing helicopter turbine components.
Damn, that's a big jump for your first job.
Well, I mean, I wasn't welding on them right off the start. I think for like the first 8 months, I was like sandblasting, grinding, cleaning gutters and cleaning bathrooms, mopping, all that stuff. And then I finally had to because I was there because they were like, okay, you're going to weld. And then I just kept bugging them until they're like, okay, we'll give you an hour after work unpaid. I was like, fine, just to practice. And so that's where I started. And my buddy, his dad is kind of involved with helping that company out. That's how I kind of got the job. And then, so after I left there, after I went to a different place, when he started his company, he decided to make those same parts. So he kind of works in unison with that other company, kind of help each other out. So he had to get like a FAA approved repair manual, specifically for Rolls-Royce parts and procedures, which is like the amount of stuff that you have to go through to get approved to be in a repair station through the FAA is pretty wild. Like it's a lot of stuff. So he did all that. And since I had already had experience doing that for years, I just kind of help him with that. And then from there, we were kind of like, well, we're not going to be able to eat if all we're doing is just these parts. So we branched out and just started reaching out to people to do general fabrication and heavy equipment repair. Like we do a bunch of heavy equipment repair at this junkyard right down the street from us, that is the most crazy welding experience. I think like it's totally opposite of anything I've ever done before. Like it's not in a shop, it's off a rig, outside, crazy heavy equipment, just thick steel, stick welding. Like it's crazy. Junkyard work. It's gnarly.
You're kind of going from like one extreme to another, whereas like at your day job, you're doing like all this precision, really tight tolerance, everything's by the book, by a procedure. And then, on the nights and weekends and stuff, you're popping over to a junkyard and like, I just heat it and beat it, get it in place, tack it up, weld it out. Just make sure it holds.
Dude, I can't tell you how many times I've had to cut metal, and I just took some 5/32 6010, pumped up the welder to like 280 amps and just fucking
rip it in there. Now, do you find it like hard going from one area to the next? Because like when I did a lot of precise measurements and stuff over when I did a lot of work at Disney, and like building handrails and guardrails and like different ride components and doing repairs out there, and everything's held to such a tight tolerance. It's very clean work as far as like base metal prep and all that. Do you transfer a lot of that into like your side job and like you're kind of over analyzing it, or it's just like, okay, I just changed from one mentality to the next, and this is what I can get away with here, and this is what I have to do on this side?
Yeah, at first, yes. When I first started doing it, it was. And then when I realized what I could get away with, it started going the opposite way. So it started going from just fucking put it together, just throw it together, slap it. who cares how the weld looks? It just needs to hold for, the next couple months. Just get it in there. Just put it on, blah, 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 beat it to death, whatever. And that kind of like, I don't know, that kind of transferred over into my job that I have now, where it's more precise. I'm not really doing helicopter parts now. I do that on the side, but like my full-time job doing rotational fixtures for aerospace companies, that takes a lot of precision too. That's plus or minus 30 tolerance. And so going from that to the junkyard stuff to that, I find myself sometimes doing the same sort of thing. Like, who cares? Fuck it. Don't worry. And then at the end, it's like, well, that didn't work out at all. Like, I didn't take my time and focus. And so like finding a balance in between jobs, like as far as mentality is concerned, it's a struggle. I didn't know it would be, but it is. Yeah.
I used to have journeymen riding my ass all the time. They're like, come on, we're not building we're not launching a rocket into space. We're not building a Timex. Let's go. Like, get it in there, weld it up. It doesn't have to be like plus or minus a half of an inch, when you're working on a structural steel building. That's pretty damn good. And I'm like over there trying to get it within a 16th because, changing from one type of work to the next, it's hard to stay in that realm. It's hard to shift gears and be like, okay, I can cheat it a half an inch over here and I'm still going to be okay versus, if I'm off like a 16th or 3/32 over here, I'm going to have to cut the whole thing apart and redo it.
Yeah. That's like a 16th seems like a mile.
Yeah, with the stuff that you're doing, yeah.
Well, it's right, yeah. When you're a 16th out, you're like, that's like double tolerance, and you're like, fuck, all right. But like, I remember I worked for some time in Vegas. And the first place I worked at in Vegas, I was doing I worked for like a gate company, just making just random fences and gates for homes and stuff. And I remember I was like on the pickets in the fence that I was welding, I didn't like. There's a couple of them where I didn't wrap the weld all the way, and there was kind of like a gap. I was like, fuck, all right, I'm gonna go back and just put some metal on there, just scam some. And the guy came up to me, he's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm just fixing this. I didn't go all the way around." He's like, "No, who cares? It just needs to hold its own ass. Just fucking." I'm like, "Oh shit, I don't." It was weird because it was weird putting myself in that mentality. Like I felt like I went backwards in my career. So like. I didn't like that whole just scam it together, put it together, whatever production, just get it out the door, paint it and send it. And then after that, when I was still in Vegas, I moved to this place, building shooting ranges out of shipping containers for the military. And that was all armored steel, like bullet catchers and stuff like that. Now that was a wild experience because it mixed a lot of that, like, okay, cut it and get it done, but it needs to be precise.
Yeah.
So that's where it was like, it's hard to do both at the same time too, because it's like when you start moving fast is when you start making mistakes, and then it's like, I don't know, that was a crazy experience too.
So were you doing like a lot with AR 500 and all that?
It was AR it was AR 500 or AR 550. I don't remember which it was.
Okay.
I started on doing bullet catchers, and that was all armored steel, and that was crazy to weld on. And then I went on to working on the shipping container part, and that was crazy because it was summertime in Vegas. So, this guy came up to me. He's like, "Hey, we need you to go out and work on this Connex box outside. Just put these pieces on." I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "All right, you have till 9 o'clock." I was like, "Why does it need to go?" And he's like, "No, that's just when the sun's going to be on you and you're going to fucking die." And I was like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore.
You got to weld this out before you die.
Yeah. It was rough, man. That was the craziest. Welding in that heat was, I don't recommend it.
No, that's ridiculous. We had to do a lot of howitzer repairs out in the middle of Kuwait. And it's like pushing 120, 130, and the wind's blowing 25 miles an hour, and you're out there with a spool gun trying to weld these things out because like all the travel locks were made out of aluminum. And it's just a very simple, it's like a box out of tube with an X in the middle, and that's literally just, they bring the barrel down and they lock it in so as they're driving down the road, it's not bouncing up and down. And because that high vibration and cyclical load, the welds were constantly cracking. And I mean, like we would go out there and like, no kidding, there's like a field of 100 howitzers. And we just start at the first line, man, and just kind of, grab each travel lock right there on site. We had a little contact truck, pull up and, set up a bunch of sheets and stuff, grind it out and weld it back up and on to the next one. And I mean, that's what we did for like weeks on end, is just fix howitzer travel locks. And the heat is just ridiculous. We'd go out there and weld in a flight suit, just put your skivvies on, combat boots, and a flight suit. And, you still got your flak jacket and Kevlar on. I mean, unless you got your hood on, then you can take your hood off. But you still, for the most part, you got your flak jacket on, which sucks trying to weld in that damn thing because, you got 20, 30 pounds of sappy plate inserts in there. So it's like constant heat and weight and, moving around in the sand. It's like walking around at the beach and people are like, oh, yeah, people that haven't experienced that type of heat, they're like, oh, well, it's a dry heat. And it's like, okay, yeah, no, it is a dry heat. So here's what I want you. I want you to go down to the playground when it's 120 degrees outside and throw a handful of sand in your face and then blow it off with a blow dryer on high heat. Yeah, that's a different kind of heat. I get there's no humidity, but it's 130 degrees is still 130 degrees, man. It's freaking hot. And then having to work.
Yeah, it sucks wall to wall.
Yeah, there's no fun in that.
No, I got a question for you though, as far as being over there in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to someone about this, and they said that they used to have to bury their canteens underground so that they would stay cool enough to drink.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you guys had to do?
No, that would make sense. I was spoiled. I was attached. The first time I went over, I was attached to a maintenance battalion. So we just had like hooches. So we had tents on the inside, and we had small refrigerators, or we'd get water out of the chow hall, or we had like a big reefer truck out there you could always go up and get water out of. And then when I was in Iraq, I was with 8th Engineer Support Battalion, and we had a deep freezer. So like, you take a bottle out, you put a bottle in, and like we're drinking them fast enough that they wouldn't typically freeze. I mean, you get up the next morning and there'd be some frozen ones in there. But for the most part, yeah, you need to keep it in the shade or something like that. And I drank a lot of it at room temp because I read a story the other day on Facebook about this kid, and I never even thought about it, but he got heat exhaustion. He was out there working and everything, and all of a sudden he started getting lightheaded and dizzy. So his dad's like, here, grab a bottle of water, go sit in the truck and drink it. And so he jumps in the truck, he's drinking the water, and it's like ice cold water from the cooler, and he's got the AC blowing on him. And then all of a sudden he just kind of felt really, really lightheaded, like he was going to pass out. So he opened the door of the truck and he went to climb out and just boom, fell flat on his face. And I guess what had happened, and like you're supposed to sip room temperature water if you're having any sort of heat exhaustion, heat stroke, anything like that, because what happens is you put that ice cold water in your stomach. Now all of a sudden your body thinks you're going into hypothermia, and it throws your body into shock. So I was like, damn, I never thought of that. But like your body absorbs water a lot better at room temperature. So I always try to drink water at room temperature versus like ice cold or anything like that. If I'm out in the field or working or anything like that, just try to keep it like around 60, 70 degrees if possible, not super cold.
Yeah, that was wild. I remember hearing that about the whole like your body processes water better when it's room temperature, not cold. But I mean, come on. Sometimes you just got to drink like a nice ice cold Coors Light.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, but you don't want to do that while you're like on the verge of, some sort of heat illness and stuff, like hanging out in the garage, slam one back, or, when you get home from work, different story. But like we used to roof down here in Florida and do prefab metal buildings and stuff. And I'd be up there and I'd have to do a lot of the welding up there. So we had like internal valley gutters on a lot of these things. So you're talking about a gutter system that's probably 18 to 20 inches deep and 14 inches wide. And you have to, they come in 20-foot sections. So we'd slide it up under the roof, and we'd link 2 to 3 sections together, weld it all out at the seams, and then the guys would hang it up underneath the roof panels and screw it in from the top. And, I'm up there out of a man lift, welding all this stuff together with a spool gun. And again, we're shooting the roof, and the roof temperature, because it's like galvalume, it's like 150 degrees up there. So, I mean, it's like, it's freaking cooking up there down here in the Florida sun. I mean, it's not that hot out here, but everything that we're touching and grabbing, it's about 150 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's ridiculously hot.
Yeah, my mom just got back from Florida like a few days ago, and she wanted to move out there, and then I pick her up from the airport, and she's like, no,
that.
I'm staying here. That was horrible.
Well, you guys have like perfect weather out there, even though like Florida's really close to the ocean, but so are you guys. But we're hitting, 98. The other day I jumped in my car. It was like 101 degrees outside. And I was like, damn, it's ridiculous. But you guys pretty much have like mid 70s year round for the most part.
Well, I mean, depends on how like where you were in San Diego,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. Like you get your spikes and stuff, it'll get up to 80s, 90s, like very rarely 100. But like if you drive like 30 minutes inland, they'll be hitting 100.
Okay.
Like where I live, it stays like around 70 pretty much. It was 70, 80. And then like you don't even do that in winter. And then it gets really cold at night. I mean, okay, I say really cold. People are like, what's your definition of cold? Cold for here in the morning, it's like it'll be in 30, high 30s, low 40s. But for the most part, the weather's perfect. Like I'm from Maryland.
Okay.
Well, I moved out here when I was 6, but I'm from there, and that was pretty extreme. Two extremes, like changing coming from there going over to here. It didn't seem like there was any break in any season. It just seemed like it was, consistent. You didn't know it was winter. You didn't know it was, spring or blah blah blah, whatever. But I mean, summertime. I mean, lately here it's been so goddamn humid.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like I'm in Florida.
Yeah,
but probably not as bad though.
Yeah, when we were out there talking to Sam and everything, I think it was like 84, 85, and he's like, man, sorry guys, it's usually not this hot in there. And we're like, what are you talking about? This is gorgeous, man. This is beautiful weather. And the whole time he's like over there sweating and everything, wiping himself down with a roll of paper towels. And I was like, no, this is nice. Like you got to come over to our neck of the woods, man. You walk outside, it's like, damn. It's the only way. It's just hot and moist. it's disgusting.
You're just sticky all the time.
Yeah, I just got back from Ohio. I had to go up to my grandfather passed away, so I had to come back from the funeral the other day. And as soon as you walk off the plane, even there in the terminal where you're transferring from the plane to that little tube that takes you up to the airport, it's like, it's sticky. It's like, damn, take me back to Ohio. It's like I don't know why the hell I continue to live down here, but. I don't know. I like everything else other than the heat.
I hear Florida's pretty. I mean, I swear to God, no matter where you go, it's gonna be. You're gonna have some sort of weather complaint.
Yep.
I mean, it's whatever.
Yeah. So how did you when you started off in that shop? Did you go to welding school first, or did you start off in that shop kind of like sweeping, cleaning, grinding, and sandblasting, and then just kind of learn welding in there?
So, my buddy's dad actually ran the welding department at a community college. He was a pipe welder for like 20 years. He built that San Onofre power plant. He was part of that whole project right next to Camp Pendleton and stuff. And then he went into teaching, and he's got a son into it. Obviously, my buddy was just like, okay, well, whatever, let's go for this. And so since he was already doing it, my dad kind of was like, well, you suck at school, so learn a trade. And so I was like, well, might as well go where my best friend goes and see what this is all about, see if I like it. And so they hooked me up, got me in class. I took 2 classes. I took a Weld 100 class, and I took a Weld 140 class, which was qualification and specification for welders. Basically, they talked about discontinuities, defects, basically how to do a visual inspection on a weld, pretty much. And then since he was friends with this guy who ran this company, the dude asked him if he knew any students that he could hire, and came up to me after the second class. He's like, you want a job? And I was like, hell yeah. Like, are you kidding me? I work at a grocery store right now. Like, yeah, let's do it. And then I stopped going to school after that, which I really wish I didn't. But I was like, hey, I got a job. But I was young. I was like 21. So I was like, screw it, whatever. And then that's kind of how I got started in that shop. It was just who I knew. And then I also worked at the school as a teacher's assistant at the same time, which was pretty rad. That was a cool experience. Mm-hmm. But
so I guess it all kind of worked out for you, because you just congratulations on your new promotion there at work.
Yeah, thank you.
Now you're up to doing aerospace D17-1 stuff and getting ready to test out on some different applications.
Yeah, so a lot of what we do at the job I have now, a lot of what we do, it's all a bunch of square. I mean, you've seen it. It's all a bunch of square tubing type stuff. But I think what they want us to test for covers a lot of, basically when certain aerospace companies ask like who's inspecting the welds, we don't have a CWI on site. We like the only thing that they require is a certified welder visually inspecting the welds. So in this new position that I got, that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing, me and this other guy. So we're going to be able to check each other's work and then check all the other welders' work.
Okay.
So the test that we're doing, it's like 3-inch. I forgot how thick. They just briefly ran over it. I'm doing a TIG pipe test at 6G and then a MIG pipe test at 6G on 8-inch for MIG and then 3-inch for TIG.
Okay.
And that's supposed to cover everything that we could potentially be doing as far as welding. Like it, it certifies me for a bunch of other stuff or whatever. I don't know. That's how they operate. So.
Okay. So you guys gonna be doing open root, or you got like a chill ring on the inside of it?
Open root.
Okay. And that's the best way to do it, because like a lot of times, like testing with a backing, you're limited to only welding with a backing bar, so you can't do any open root. But if you test open root, now you can do open root and with backing. So that's kind of a nice little buffer they got built in there.
Yeah, because we did a certification for this one aerospace company for one particular job, and that we had a backing strip on that, but it wasn't pipe. It was horizontal flat plate with I think 32-degree bevels or something like that. I forgot how big. It was years ago. I don't remember how it was, but the certification I'm going to be doing now, it's only Class C, but still, I'm pretty stoked on it.
Right. So how do you? Because you do a lot of like badass looking welds. I mean, like the Instagram worthy quality stuff. Where do you figure out? Because I mean, and you weld a lot of different things too. So I mean, I want to talk about like, what's your methodology for dialing your settings? Are you referring to a WPS, or are you grabbing scrap, or what's your process? You get material in, you get it all prepped and cleaned up, and then you obviously tack it together, check for tolerance, and then you start welding on it. How do you keep from getting the wrong settings and screwing up on the first joint?
So there's certain jobs require you to go by the WPS. Oftentimes it's just like, okay, just, go off your experience. Generally, sometimes I'll take a practice piece if it's real different and I'm not really sure, like I don't really have that much of an idea of how it's going to react. Generally, like at this point now, I've been there for about 6, almost 7 years. I kind of know the general ballpark of where things are going to run really nice, and hopefully I have more than one try at it. So, but I'm never that far off to where it's like, okay, scrap the part. I have that. I don't know if you got the Weld Bible that I sent you.
It should be here. I just checked last night, because I went up to my P.O. box last night and I checked it, and then I was like, well, it might be here right before the show when we, because we're recording it 1 o'clock my time on Saturday. I was like, it might be there, but it might not. I don't want to run out to the post office box yet. So I was waiting for things to get a confirmation.
So that's where I keep like my settings for specific parts that we do there. Not only for me, like, because we do a lot of different stuff, and then we'll go back to doing, like a production run of things. So I'll go back in there because I'm like, oh shit, what do I run for this? Or like, how is my like setup? Like, do I use heat sinks? Do I blah, 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 so I'll go back in there, and that kind of gives me a setting or a ballpark. And if I'll go back to that, I'll refer to that. And then if I'm doing it, I'm like, oh, it's because I swear to God, man, like the welders, it's like they have their good and bad days sometimes. And I'm not saying they're just different. Sometimes I'm welding on things and it's like, okay, this is pretty normal. And then some days I'm welding the same settings and it's just acting slightly different.
You're talking about the machine, not the person, right?
Yeah. It's like, what's going on now? So it's like, okay, well, maybe it's my contact tip, fresh contact tip. Let's start from scratch. Let's maybe, let's clean the consumables a little bit. Let's start from zero. But usually, fine tweak. I usually stay around a specific area, generally between 20 volts and 23 volts. averaging like 300 to 400 IPM, whatever basically where I stay. So it's kind of hard to completely miss, you know what I mean? Like to completely lay down a bad one.
Right.
Because the settings generally don't change that much.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just been experience and practice.
I had Rob Tessier on with Air Gas. We did a whole episode on, it's not you, it's your machine. And I've noticed that, like jumping into a student's booth or something like that, I'll set his settings to like, I know this settings works for this thickness of material, this position, and this mode of metal transfer or whatever. And then come to find out you've got like you said, your contact tip to work distance is out, or, your contact tip is shot, it's all wallered out, or a lot of times it's just the contact tip being loose. So taking the nozzle off and tightening that down, because your wire's not energized until it hits that part. And if that part isn't nice, snug, tight connection, you're not getting that same current power generation right there at the tip of the wire. And then liner's another big one, swapping the liner out. And I know that like most manufacturers, they recommend a new liner for every spool of wire. But that's, like in my experience, that's not really practical. The amount of spools that I'm throwing down at a school, that's just like, I think they're just trying to sell more liners. But, I know for a fact that I can probably get, I don't know, maybe 10 spools through a liner before we got to swap it. Because we'll swap liners out probably 2, maybe 3 times a year. Like definitely after every cohort that comes through, we'll swap liners out. And then if I'm running into issues, I'll check feeding rates and stuff like that. And if I feel like there's a snag or something like that, we'll go ahead and change it out. Flux core seems, we do flux core kind of at the end of our level 1 program, or at the beginning of our level 2.
Yeah. And
flux core seems to drop a lot of crap in there in the liner and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Well, you're going to laugh because I didn't change my first liner until like last year.
Oh, damn.
I never changed it. And like there's a guy I work with. We've had these new welders. We got a whole new rig set up, like a whole new power supply and wire feeder. He hasn't changed his out in like 2 or 3.
Damn.
Because I looked it up, because my liner was messing up. It was so dirty. It was snagging. Like I couldn't even pull the wire through. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I need to rectify the situation. This is completely shot. So I started changing liners, and I was kind of doing some research, and I was asking a coworker, I was like, hey, how often do you change liners? Because I saw something online that said like maybe like every 6 months, should probably change it. And he's like, oh, I just only change it if I get a kink in it, like if he steps on it or something.
Yeah.
I'm like, this guy's been welding for 20 plus years. And I'm like, well, shit. Okay. I guess liners don't need to be replaced that much. But then mine have been getting so dirty that the wire will just stop coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been putting on these like little, you put them on the wire, like right where the wire goes into the drive rolls. Like
Contesco makes those little pink, it's like a felt. Yeah, you put that on there and then put a few drops of lubricant on there and a cleaner and put that on there to kind of pre-clean the wire before it goes through. I will let you know a little secret, and anybody else that's listening, I had those on my Lincoln machines because I didn't know any better. And the rep seen it, and he's like, dude, you gotta pull those off. And I was like, why? He's like, apparently Lincoln applies, especially on their 70S6 wire, they put their own lubricant on there that keeps anything from getting onto it. And when you put that little felt liner pad on there, it takes all that lubricant or whatever they put on there, to prevent feeding issues. It strips all that stuff off. So your wire runs completely different. So you're going to have to jack up your settings a little bit more if you run those little felt liners.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't run Lincoln.
I would imagine if they're like some other manufacturers, they may have the same like pre-treatment of stuff that they put on there. But just in case you're ever running that type of wire, I know that they put like their own lubricant on the wire. So I'd check with the manufacturer and see if they do, because then you might not have to put those little felt pieces on there, and then it could just be just a liner.
Yeah, I was for like a while. I had like we get the filament we get, like it usually runs really good, and then for some reason we got like a pallet of wire, and then like 5 or 6 boxes. It seemed like the copper was just shaving off of it. The copper coating. Mm-hmm. And I was getting like on the end of my little felt pad, I was getting just bunched up little, things of copper and like dirt. And it was on the backside, so it was coming in. It wasn't, on the other side. Like my drive rolls weren't too tight, weren't squishing off, whatever. It wasn't my liner, wasn't anything like that, but it was clogging up my drive rolls. Like it was like the little felt pad wasn't enough to clean it, and it would just totally mess up my entire gun. Like I had to get a whole new gun because I couldn't fix it. And I don't know, man, it was weird, man. But there was other ones that were fine. Shit, there was nothing on them. The copper was staying on. It wasn't like coming off in shavings, like something was scraping it or something. I didn't know if like the wire was rubbing or I don't know. It was weird.
You ever like when you tension your line instead of going off that little guide on the inside of the machine? One of the things I'll do is go ahead and run your line or run your wire through there, put your drive rolls on, and then I'll hold the gun once the wire comes out the contact tip and nozzle. Just kind of bend that wire to a like a little 20-30 degree and point it on the ground at about 6 inches. 6 inches off the concrete, or you can do it in your hand too, but I do it off the concrete. That way I can make my adjustments and then pull the trigger. And so there shouldn't be any wire coming from because you undo the tension on the drive rolls. Point the gun, pull the trigger, and then just slowly start adding pressure on the tensioner until that wire starts coming out, and it'll make a 4-inch diameter circle right there with your wire. And then you've got like the perfect wire tension on there, because a lot of times on the inside of the machine, it'll tell you, for for solid wire you want a number 3, and if you want to go to a flux core a solid wire you want to go to like a 6, for flux core a 5, and then for like aluminum you want to go to a 2. Well, a lot of times that spring wears out eventually, so just going off to where you've got enough pressure for if it hits resistance, it doesn't automatically put a flat spot in your wire. It'll push through that little resistance spot, but you don't want it so tight that it's pinching and crushing your wire. So that's one of the things I do.
I knew about the whole, pointing it down to the ground or like point it towards like a wooden block or something like that. I didn't know the diameter. Yeah,
it's roughly about 4 inches. Yeah, so if it's getting like a 6 inch, just tighten it down a little bit more, and then
that's what I was doing it to, was to 6.
Yeah,
I gotta try 4. See,
somewhere within like 4 to 6. I mean, it's not an exact science. That's kind of like one of those things like. When I did oxyacetylene cutting out in the field all the time, we'd never have like a tip cleaner out there. So this old timer came over and he's like, "Hey man," he's like it's spitting and popping. I can't get nothing to weld, or I can't get nothing to cut right. It's not cutting for crap. And I was like, "Man, I got to clean this thing out, and I don't have a tip cleaner." So one of the old timers came over and he grabs a 2x4 and he strikes up the torch, kind of sets it to a half-ass neutral flame because it's clogged up, so it's not burning right. Heats up a little spot on the wooden block and just lays into the oxygen and starts rubbing it back and forth, like the tip right on top of the 2x4 or the board. Yeah. Just burning a little black spot, and it's hissing and smoking and popping, but it creates a reaction and it blows all the crap out of the tip. So that was like a little handy field guide. This stuff you're not going to find in a textbook, but it actually works, and this stuff that old timers have shown you. So I'll show that to my students. I'm like, this is one way you can do it out in the field to clean your tip off, but not recommended best practice. I always like to take the tip off and clean it from the back going forward, or from the forward going back, but take the tip off the torch. And if you can't do it the right way, that's just like one way you can kind of cheat the system.
Yeah, that kind of stuff is so rad to me, like, because not all the time you're going to be in an ideal welding situation.
Yeah.
You're not always going to be able to go by the book. And you're going to have to do some things a little different or a little sketchy, or, not recommended.
Yeah, you got to get creative.
That's like that. I mean, learning about all that stuff coming out of school, because they were so like, do this. You cannot get away from this. Do not do this. Never do this. Blah, 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 blah. And then you're like, okay, well, this is how the rest of the world is welding. This is how you're going to go there. They're going to be the same thing. Hey, never do that. Blah, 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 blah. Then you go to these places and you get these guys with missing teeth and fingers, and they're like, fuck it, man, it works every time.
Let me show you something. But that's the part you got to be, and I've always said it on the podcast and to my students and stuff, is like, you got to be nice to the old guys, because if you're a dick, they'll watch you struggle all day long, and they can walk over and just give you one sentence and change the path of the rest of your day, and for for the work going forward, they can just say one thing that'll make life so much easier. Like I was having a lot of problems with MIG welding for aluminum, and like, always getting feeding issues and stuff like that, trying to figure out what it is. And they're like, if you take that contact tip, just, if you're running like 0.45, bump it up to like a, one diameter larger on your contact tip, you'll quit getting those feeding issues. And I was like, oh, okay. So I started running, like if you're running like a 1 or 5/64 wire, you can bump it up to a 1/16 diameter contact tip, and you can run it that way, and you'll get a lot less feeding issues. You got to play with your settings a little bit more, because obviously your contact tip, that's where your amperage is coming from. But if you bump up one size, because it almost seems like as that aluminum is coming through, because aluminum's it's like a superconductor compared to steel and other stuff, so it kind of swells up as it's going through that contact tip. So it gets a little bit thicker, and you end up getting a lot of feeding issues. So I just started bumping up one size larger, and it worked out great.
So did you have to bump up your volts for it too?
Not really. No, just wire feed speed a little bit.
Oh, okay. Oh, you didn't have to change the voltage at all.
No, because all your amperage is right there in your wire feed speed. So if I need a little bit more heat, I just bump the wire feed speed up.
Oh, okay. All right, that makes sense. Yeah, shit. I did not know that. I don't know. I've never ever in my entire life MIG welded aluminum.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it can be a pain in the ass, especially like out in the field. We did a lot of Disney has that food. Yeah, it's easy for you to say. Food and wine festival every year. And we'd have to go out, and they would like hire these contractors to build these things. And then we would have to go out there and like repair them after they remove, because they set them with a crane. They set them all through Epcot and everything. And then they bring them back and they inspect them. And we're going through these things like to make weld repairs, because a lot of them are cracking and breaking. We're like, damn, like they completely missed the weld joint here. I'm surprised this whole thing's hanging up. But like welding out in the field with a spool gun's completely different than running at a shop, where you can actually close the doors. So you're out there dealing with, wind and dirt and debris and all that stuff. And it wasn't until I got into teaching and started to learn how important like pre-cleaning your aluminum is, like especially just, I learned from Travis Fields, taking that wire brush and just brushing your aluminum one direction. And I was like, damn, that's so simple and it makes so much sense. Because if you brush it back and forth like you do on steel, so
you're just keeping it on there.
Yeah, you're lifting up the aluminum oxides as you pull it one way, and as you push it back the other, now you're pushing it back into the material.
Oh, Jesus
because aluminum's so soft, you're pulling it one way and then pushing it right back, and it's just embedding itself. Same thing with I used to do a lot with a wire wheel. Put a wire wheel in there and just drag across, and now all of a sudden you're heating that up, so you're driving those aluminum oxides and dirt and crap on the surface deeper into the material. So as you weld, all that stuff starts to propagate. And you're like, damn, this wire's shit. Or like, this material's just nasty. No, you got to wire brush it one way with a stainless steel wire brush, just a small little toothbrush one. 5 or 6 strokes, man, it cleans it right up. And then maybe hit it with some dechlorinated brake clean or a little bit of acetone. But you're not always going to do that in the field. But yeah, with that little wire brush, that'll alleviate, probably 90% of your problems.
Jesus, man. You're blowing my mind. So, okay, wait. Sorry, now I'm going to be interviewing you.
Okay, go ahead.
When you're MIG welding aluminum, are you doing a 75-25 argon helium mix?
100% argon. Now you can, depending on like thicker materials and stuff like that, you can you can add a little bit of helium in there. But for the most part, I run 100% argon with it.
Wow. That's wild. I've been always curious to know just even what it feels like to weld aluminum on MIG. Like it's got, I don't, because TIG welding aluminum, it's wild compared to TIG welding stainless or just regular steel or pretty much anything else, because it's so violent and loud and it's so different. And it's like, it's like two opposite ends of the spectrum on how to weld one versus the other.
Yeah. Yeah, aluminum TIG's like a different animal altogether, because now you're switching over to AC.
When you're MIG welding?
No, when you're aluminum.
Yeah.
Aluminum TIG.
So like when you're MIG welding aluminum, like is it like you got your push pull gun?
Yep.
Right, and your contact tip, what you're telling me, 100% argon, and like what kind of like settings are you running for the machine?
It really depends on like the thickness of your material and what kind of amperage you have. So. Most manufacturers of consumables, they'll put out a book, like a consumables book, and they'll give you some rough amperages as far as like, if you set it to like 22 volts and like 250 inches a minute on your wire feed speed, you're going to get approximately 165 amps. I'm just throwing numbers out on that. I'd actually have to go back to my book and look at it.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
But it tells me, like how many amps that I need. So I'll just kind of play around with that. But a lot of times I find myself in the realm of like 23 volts and, like maybe 350, 425 inches a minute. It just really depends on thickness of the material, the direction of travel, if I'm going vertical up or vertical down, horizontal or flat, and then, the thickness of the material. Because a lot of times you can blow right through it. Like if you're set up too high, like on 1/8 inch aluminum, you can boom, blow right through it.
Oh, easy. Oh, for sure. So when you're doing a vertical down, or actually I got yelled at for calling it uphill and downhill. Some
really?
Fucking guy was like, it's actually called vertical up.
Oh, geez.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, we're gonna split hairs here.
Because I know like in MIG welding, you can get away with doing a vertical down. It's definitely not recommended in most situations. So with aluminum, is that the same kind of mentality where it's like
same kind of concept. So like when I'm doing like a lot of like gates and handrails and guardrails and stuff like that, a lot of times you're dealing within the realm of like 1/8 inch, 3/16. So you can catch a vertical down on that without a problem. But like once you get up into like 1/4 inch, 3/8, anything like that, I'm always doing, vertical up. Same thing with like short circuit MIG. And I use the general rule of thumb, 1/4 inch and below, you can get away with downhill. And everybody's like, oh, you don't get enough penetration. It's like, well, yeah, you get plenty of penetration. I'm not trying to blow through it. I just want that root to punch in there and be structurally sound. And I can do that going downhill. And then, you can also change the amount of heat input depending on how fast you're traveling. Like if you just pull the trigger and whip down really quick, you're probably not going to get a whole lot of penetration. But if I do it, like a slow, steady pull and go down and just kind of stay right on the leading edge of that puddle and let gravity be the judge of my speed, a lot of times you can punch in and you'll be just fine. Now, obviously, if you have like a welding procedure specification, it's going to dictate direction of travel. That's going to be one of your essential variables. You can't change the direction of vertical up or vertical down just because, you feel like doing it something different or you think it's going to be faster the other way. You got to follow that WPS. But for like, most of the stuff that I've done, like especially like in my home shop, in my garage, I got a buddy that he builds gates like year round. I mean, that's what he does. He builds like big fancy ornamental gates, or he does gate repairs and stuff like that. Most of that material is like 1/8 inch thick. So a lot of times you can get away with going vertical down on that and you won't have any problems whatsoever.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff that like we get away with doing a lot of vertical down, and sometimes it's like, okay, this is why I've been trying to practice a lot of vertical up, because in some cases I feel comfortable doing it depending on the design of the build, because typically the stuff that gets engineered at my work is supposed to take, I think, 4 times what it's actually going to be taking. And then it gets over engineered to a point to where it's not completely reliant on, I'm not sure how they figure it out. So some things I'll do vertical down all the time, especially if it's like a flare bevel where it's like a square tube to the side of another one, because it's like, okay, I'm easily melting that edge into that radius. It's fine. But sometimes it's like, they wanted this 3/8 inch weld on this big, I think it was like a 1/2 inch plate to a 1/4 inch square tube. Or something like that. No, what was it? No, 3/8 1/4 inch weld, 1/4 inch square tube is what it was. And I was like, it's gonna look ugly if I, like, the toes are gonna look ugly. The toes are just gonna be literally sitting on top of the metal, and it's gonna look like shit. So that's when I was like, okay, well, I'm starting to get away from just doing how they're kind of like, okay, just do a downhill on it, and starting to get to, okay, let's do something a little proper here. Let's try to work into, putting uphills into this situation, because we can't downhill everything. You just can't get away with it.
I would recommend like grabbing some 90-10 and doing like a spray transfer. Depending on the type of machine you have, you can do like a pulse spray and run vertical up. So, but you got to have like 85% or higher argon. Well, technically 82, but I like to order 85 or better. That way, if they're off, 1 or 2% on their mix, it's not going to be, bad one way or the other. But a lot of times we'll run 90-10 for the most part, get into a spray transfer, but you can only do that flat and horizontal. So if you have a machine that'll do pulse, you can get away with going vertical that way, because you really want to punch into that 1/2 inch or 3/8 plate a lot more than the 1/4 inch side. That way you get good depth of fusion.
Right. So the machine we have, we run a Miller & Vision 352 MPa, and then the wire feeder is, oh my God, I always forget the wire feeder. But the wire feeder, basically the whole thing is controlled off the wire feeder. Voltage, IPM, it has fast fill. No, what is it? Hot start and crater fill.
Okay.
Setting. And then it can also do pulse, but we don't really do pulse that much. I'm pretty inexperienced with pulse.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by AHP Welders. If welding is your hobby, or you just need a machine to do some odd jobs, or you just want to practice at the house and you want to do it for under $1,000, swing by ahpwelds.com and find the machine that's right for you. You can use Arc Junkies in the comment section and get a free Nova foot pedal and torch with the purchase of any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal. We're also brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. Quit finding your work and make your fabricating and shop life easier today with the help of some of the cool stuff over at stronghandtools.com/arcjunkies. Whether you need a new fabrication table, bottle holders, torch holders, or fixed string accessories, Stronghand has it all. Head on over to stronghandtools.com/arcjunkies and see what they have to help you increase your speed and accuracy and shop life in general. Now let's get back into the show. Yeah, if you wanted to get into like more in depth on pulse, we could definitely have a conversation. You can call me up anytime. I'd have to pull, whatever wire you're running. Look at the consumables book for that manufacturer, that company, and they should have some general settings for pulse. But especially if you have to do vertical, like anytime I have to run something, I try to run it flat. But if I can't, because obviously it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass to flip the part up to get it flat. And you have to weld it in vertical. I use just like a little triangular pattern anytime I have to go vertical up, and it'll spray in there really nice. The biggest thing is the gas mixture. You definitely want to bump up to like a 90-10 mix or 85-15 or anything above 85% argon, and then the remaining balance CO2. And then contact tip to work distance is going to change. So most likely, like with short circuit MIG, you're doing 3/8 to 1/2 inch roughly. You're going to bump up to like 3/4 inch stick out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so 3/4, 7/8 stick out. You want to give that wire a little bit of time to preheat, because it's gonna come off as like a fine little droplet mist into the weld pool, and it's gonna sound like a pissed off hornet. So it's like a bzzz sound.
Yeah.
And then you just kind of trace the leading edge of your puddle in a little triangular pattern, and then bumping up the your CFH on the bottle. So running to like, I don't know, I usually run 45, 50 CFH. Whereas with regular MIG, you're probably running 15 to 25. Yeah, when you change pulse, you want a lot more gas shielding in there, because you want to keep that pool a little bit cooler, because you're going to notice a significant difference in heat.
Dude, oh my God. Speaking of, when you brought up CFH, it just reminded me of this, like for like a whole week, like, remember how we're kind of talking, like you're talking about that guy who's on there. You said, oh, it's not you, it's the machine. Dude, for like a whole week, man, I was like, what's going on here? Like my MIG welds were like, it was like I didn't know what I was doing. Like nothing wasn't cut, everything wasn't coming out right. I realized, because I was hanging my hood on my regulator at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently what I was doing was I kept turning up the CFH slowly, and like because I set my CFH, because I don't change it that much to where like I don't change settings that much to where like, okay, let's bump up the CFH. Like I'm not going to bump it up 5.
Right.
I'm sorry. Like I'm just going to kind of keep it in a good area, and that's it. And I was like doing short circuit, like 20 volts or maybe even less. And I was like on like 60 CFH.
Damn.
And I was like, well, that's there it is right there. Put it right back down to like 20, 25. And I was like, God damn it. And then this is just recently, this is how new I am to stick welding. Like I did it a lot in school and I picked it up really well, but I haven't had to do it for the past, 7-8 years that much, here and there. But like for like 2 weeks, my buddy has this like rig, obviously. And then I go down to the junkyard and I do, weld repairs and stuff like that. So I'm just stick welding, and he just kind of lets me do my thing. He's like, oh, you know what you're doing. Fine, go ahead. for 2 weeks I was welding on an opposite polarity.
Oh shit, yeah.
And then dude, I was doing this repair and it wasn't working out right. Like I couldn't start it, like when you try to start like 60-10 when it's switched over and it kind of like kind of like doesn't want to start. My buddy's dad shows up and he's like, you know what that means, right? You got your shit mixed, buddy. Just like dude, they were giving me so much crap and I was so embarrassed. Like I was, dude, like thinking that, like, here's the thing, like thinking that, and then you realize that you don't know shit. Dude, it hits you like a Mack truck, dude. Like as experienced as I think I am, I realize how little I know about, a lot about different processes and different aspects of welding. It's crazy how much there is to know about it.
You can actually run your 6010s on straight polarity, roughly the same amps. You got to bump it up a little bit, but it's designed to run on negative and positive. But most of the time, you're going to get better results when you run it on DC positive.
Yeah, and then I think, but 7018 you can't do, right?
Yeah, 7018. Shit, I have to look it up. I mean, you can run it on. You should be able to, because you can run it on AC.
Yeah, because you can do both with. So, I mean, it would work. Granted, like I said, I was welding 2 weeks with it, but it wasn't. It wasn't how it should have been running.
Right. Yeah. Primarily, like when you definitely want to run it on DC positive, or on DC positive or reverse polarity. You're going to get the best bang for your buck. But they did. This is a cool. Here's a fun fact for you. So when Lincoln came out with the 7018 rod, they wanted the average farm, their farm owner or farmer to be able to use their rod. And most of their number one selling machine at the time was the little Tombstone, the Lincoln Tombstone, and it was only on AC. So they figured out a way that, hey, if we add potassium to the electrode, it'll allow them to run it AC, because usually the rod would snuff out when it switches from negative to positive on AC. So they added potassium to it to allow it to transfer across the negative and positive. But yeah, like pretty much with 7018, DC positive and AC only. And it'll run pretty decent that way.
Dude, but hey, when you switch them back to where they're supposed to be, it welds
night and day.
Real.
So I have, it's funny because I actually do that to my students intentionally. We'll run a couple days on DC positive, and I say, okay, switch. I want you to just run, 1 day DC negative, only because I want you to hear what it sounds like, what it looks like, and what it feels like. So when it happens to you later on down the road, it's going to click, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I've got my polarity switched up, because you can hear it. It makes a distinct difference. I'd be able to walk around the job site. Hey man, hold up 1 second, go over to the machine and switch it over and be like, hey, try that. And they'd strike up and they're like, holy shit, man, that runs way better. What'd you do? And it's like, got you on the right polarity, man.
Dude. Oh yeah. That was a huge, it's like for a while after I kind of got into welding, like when I started at that, doing those helicopter parts to where I am now, it's crazy the humbling experiences you get after, like, you think that you're really good. You think you think you're one of the top dogs. You think you're the best. You think, like, I'll admit, like, I thought I was one of the best out there. Like, that's what I was thinking. And then, like, over time, I've worked probably, like, as far as side jobs and second jobs, I've been in 10 different shops helping out, or, just there partially employed or whatever. And every time I go to these different shops and I work on different things, or I do different processes, or like how I'm doing with welding on the rig, it's humbling. Like, you realize you're like, oh, like I have a lot to learn, I have a lot to do. And then it's kind of made me grow to this point where it's like, I stopped talking shit on people who lay down bad welds, or like if I see a weld out in public that's bad, I'm not tagging hammered dog shit in it. I'm just kind of like, well, maybe this is his first time, or maybe it's like the owner's son and he doesn't want to weld and he just had to get the job done, or out there, blah, blah. Like, I don't know. I've kind of been a little bit less critical on how, like, I don't know. I just don't look at myself the same as I used to, you know, not as like I'm confident, but I'm also not going to sit there and try to talk down to someone about, you know, oh, you're doing this wrong, or, you know, you need to do this, or blah, 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 or, hey, that guy's a shit welder, don't fucking blah, blah, blah. Like, especially working, like I used to always think, like, I don't get why rig welders talk shit on shop welders. I never got it. I was like, that just seems silly. And then I started welding on a rig, and it's like, oh, it's because welding on a rig, it sucks. It's shitty. And then it's, it takes a lot of work. It's a lot harder work than working in a shop.
Oh yeah. That's why it pays more.
Exactly. And then I remember, like, I like people who pipe weld and they get stuck in pipe welding, and why they stay in pipe welding and why they love it. I'm like, why do you, like, why would you like welding pipe all day? Like, that just seems boring. And then I got to weld some high pressure. We were doing a high pressure hydraulic line, and we had to do, you know, a bunch of pipe welding with, you know, the 90s and the T's and the elbows and all that other bullshit. And I was welding on that, doing TIG, you know, walking the cup. And I was like, I love this. I was like, I could do this all day. This is so much fun. I was like, oh my God. Like, so these going out there and experiencing as much as you can, doing different stuff, and like not getting stuck in one shop or in one industry, like, holy shit, is that going to blow you? Like, is that going to make you better, learn faster, learn more? And you'll just be cooler to hang around with other welders, because you're not going to be so judgmental in what they do for a living.
Yeah. I think part of that's just kind of like growing up in the industry, you know, kind of finding a different level of maturity and kind of understanding that you can get humbled really quick. And like for a long time, I like saying, man, I thought I was like a pretty damn good welder. And then I got exposed to the world of Instagram, and it was like, damn, like this is like artwork, you know? And it always gives me something to shoot for. And then I want to like learn more about the process. And it was like, how does this work? Why does this work? And like you were saying, you know, with the pipe welding, that's why I like kind of getting out of my wheelhouse and working on things that, you know, it's not like within my wheelhouse. Getting to do different things and switching up processes, and like you get really good at one process, and like, you know, you think that's who you are, and then you're like, okay, let me try this process, and then you realize, oh man, I'm not as good as I thought. This you know, switching processes will humble you really quick, especially if it's something you're not doing on a regular day-to-day basis. You know, so like if you're in a shop all the time doing a lot of MIG welding, and then you got to hop out in the field and run some flux core or stick welding and everything. It's like, damn, this is a whole new world, a whole new set of problems. And that's what that's what I love about welding, is it's like, anytime you think you're getting damn good, switch processes, you know, just keep leapfrogging back and forth and getting into different things and welding, you know, learning more. That's the coolest thing about it, is I don't think any one man or one woman out there knows everything there is to know about welding.
I don't think you can, man. Like, that was one of the first things that I was taught when I started welding, was it's easy to do, but there's a lot to know. Mm-hmm. And, you know, that what you know will affect on how easy it is to do.
Yeah.
So like, that's why, I mean, before when there'd be old guys at the shop, you know, whatever, I wouldn't really pay much attention to them, just kind of, you know, ask them for advice here and there. And now if I'm doing something different, the first time I'm looking for, okay, where's that gray beard at? I need to know how to do this like quick and the right way, or the fast way, or it's, growing up welding, or not really growing up welding, but the longer I'm welding, the more I'm starting to appreciate those guys a lot too. Because I mean, like, I feel like I know a lot, and I've only been doing it for almost, you know, about 10 years. I couldn't imagine how I would feel after been doing it for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Like, you go through some stuff, like these guys who've, you know, 20 plus year vets, like they know some shit. I mean, even if they've been doing things, you know, wrong for 20 years, there's some knowledge, and, you know,
there's definitely knowledge and experience in there. And I think that's the part that sucks is, well, I mean, now's a great time to get into welding, because like I've said in previous podcasts, the average age of a welder right now, like in the field, is 56 years of age. And these are people that got in at like 18, 20, or maybe a little bit later, but they've got quite a bit of knowledge, quite a bit of experience to be able to share. And that's why, like, the younger kids, they got to get in there now and get that knowledge within the next 10 years before all these old guys retire. because once they retire, they're not going to be answering their phone and being like, oh yeah, just dial it into here. We always used to use this trick. I mean, they're going to be out fishing and playing golf and all this other stuff and, doing whatever. It's not going to be a resource that you're going to have. You're going to lose that. And I think a lot of companies would benefit by bringing in the younger people and saying, hey, instead of having 5 to 10 years of work experience, let's bring you in with, right out of school or with 2 to 3 years of experience, and let me put you with, one of our lead guys, and he can train you so that, when he retires in the next couple of years, I've got his replacement. I'm training his replacement now,
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people see it that way. They want you to come in, they want to pay an entry-level wage, and, they want you to have 10 years welding experience. And it's like, that's not how it works. Bring them in, get them trained up.
Yeah, that's what we're doing a lot of, because that's the company that I work for now. They experienced a lot of success with actually me and the other lead welder who just got promoted as well. We both kind of started with minimal knowledge, especially with MIG and fabrication, like what they were building. And they're like, okay, well, we'll train them. And then we ended up working out. They tried it a few other times and it didn't work out. I mean, they're bad hires, blah, blah, blah. People who were trying to get into welding and then realize, oh, I don't want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But we still do it. Like, we just got a kid straight out of high school who's going to be shadowing us now, and we're going to kind of be teaching him. And but I can already kind of tell that at this point, it's like, okay, how's your attitude? Because if you don't have a good attitude, like, I would rather take a worse welder with a good attitude over the best welder who thinks he's just hot shit, no one can touch him and you can't change him and blah blah blah, who just has trash attitude, doesn't want to do the extra mile to get things done, just wants to come in, put his hood on, and
mm-hmm.
lay beads and go home. Because that's also just as important as how well you can lay down a weld. Is your attitude and how you treat other people and how you behave yourself, and how likable you are. Because shit, I don't want to work next to someone who's a dickhead.
Yeah. Attitude plays a huge part in it. And you just got to have a good attitude and be willing to learn and be receptive and, understanding to, when to shut up and pay attention and when you can actually speak. Like, as a young welder coming up, you don't want to go in there and start regurgitating all the philosophy you learned in welding school, because you don't know shit. Like, shut up, pay attention, follow directions, and learn, right? You've got the fundamentals, the basics, and all that stuff. Start expanding upon it. It's not your job to go out there and tell everybody how great of a welder you are when you've only been welding like coupons and test plates for the past 6 months. Go out there, shut up, and be willing to learn. Pay attention, focusing on what they're doing, and learn. And you're just going to get much better that way.
Yeah, that associate's degree in welding technology isn't for you to go out in the field and be like, hey, I already know everything.
Yeah.
Don't worry, guys.
I want
by
top
the way,
end pay
you're supposed to be doing this, and you're like, you won't make it.
Yeah.
Like, people will just tell you to go fuck yourself. Like,
exactly.
Easy. Like, without, and people will be glad to tell you that too.
Mm-hmm.
Some guy who's been working at the same company for 15 years has some punk that comes straight out of welding school. And it's like, actually, you're supposed to burn your rods down this far, kind of wasteful. Like, bro, I'm about to lose it.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the new book that you came out with, because I think that's a brilliant idea, and that's something I probably should have been doing that for the longest time, is writing down all my welding settings and, for different applications. I mean, I did a lot when I had to bend pipe or mill things out, like I'm writing down specific settings on that. But I probably should have been doing it for the longest time with, all my weld settings for the different processes. So let's, what caused you to start writing all that stuff down?
So it was when I started working at this company. The older gentleman that was teaching me, he had this book that had pretty much all the welding settings that he had for certain parts that we would do. So he would even use them for himself, because he wouldn't remember everything, kind of like what I was saying before. And when he was teaching me, he's like, all right, if you ever have a question, just come get this book. And he's like, okay, we're doing this part, so let's flip to this. And he says, okay, I got this, this voltage, this IPM, the gun's pointed at this angle, and then here's a turntable speed or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
He would even he was way more in depth with his notes than I am with mine. He would even draw pictures of where he put his clamps and like where he put shims to pre-bend things and how thick the shims were. And he'll be like, okay, I shimmed it this pass, I shimmed it 20 thousandths. And then, he didn't do that, but he kind of went that in depth with it. He would literally describe every single step. And then I went to the bathroom for 10 minutes and then I came back and blah, blah. But so I got a notebook myself. I was like, I'm going to do the same thing to put down the things that work for me. And then I just put on there, I called it the Weld Bible. And then I put processes and procedures, and I would put all my notes in there, how the order of which I put certain production parts together. Like I put this gusset on first, I put this gusset on second, blah, blah, blah. I used this setting for this. And I just did things that worked for things I did every day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, it'd be really cool if this was actually leather, because mine was kind of falling apart, getting ripped up, coffee stains, just
sparks and spatter.
It'd be cool if this is actually I was like, this would be cool if this is actually like a Bible, like a leather bound book. And leather's expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hit up Blue Demon. Gave them the idea, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to like collab on this? And they're like, we love the idea, let's do it. And so we pretty much worked together to make this leather bound notebook, which you can actually take. It's a composite book, so you can take the notebook out and then put a new one in if you ever fill it or whatever.
Okay, so it's a regular composition book?
Yeah, it's a composition book, but the outside is leather bound, so that sparks, coffee, dirt, just dust that settles on it, just to protect it. And it kind of makes it feel good. It makes it feel official. Like it makes it feel like
it looks legit. I mean,
yeah, it feels nice when you hold it in your hand. You're like, it makes it feel like it's important, which it is, but it's not like some cheesy notebook that you could just throw around. You're like, oh my God, like here's my notebook. Here's my, it just feels good.
Because that's one thing that I do every term is like trying to remember what settings we were on for this, that, and the other thing. And I probably should write a lot more of it down, because a lot of it's just really common stuff that we're going through. So, I mean, I think, especially if you're working in a shop environment and you're learning from these old timers, taking notes. And I get students all the time, they come up to me and they're asking me like repetitive questions. It's like, I know we've covered this. I know we went over it. I had one student, man, I started calling him Dory. Because like, I'm not even kidding. And I love the dude, super passionate, super motivated. But I was like, and actually I take that back. I've had several students now. It's like, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go get a notebook and a pen. And every time we come out into the shop, I want you to have this notebook and this pen, and you're going to write down like specific things like regarding polarity and body positioning and the thickness of the material. So I think having like that book that you created, the Weld Bible, it's a very valuable tool, to be able to have that and go back through and be like, oh damn, 6 months ago we were working on this part. What was my settings in? What are the lessons that I learned from that, that specific part that came through the shop that we cranked out. Now we got to do a batch of 60 more of them. What were my settings? What were the lessons learned? Oh yeah, it's right here in my book. So I think that's brilliant. I really think it's cool that you can get it on Amazon, because everybody's doing
Amazon bought it
now.
up. It was crazy.
That's awesome.
That was pretty wild. I think, like, because someone asked me, they're like, well, why can't you look up settings online? Like, doesn't Miller have a calculator? And it's like, well, yeah, they do for sure. Like, you can look. I mean, sometimes I still do that too if I have no idea what would be the best for this. But that generally gets you in a ballpark.
Yeah,
because of like, there's so many factors involved. Like, how's your ground? How's your, like you said, how's your liner? How's your, how's your tensioners? How's your contact tip? How's, how far away from, how far away from the ground is your workpiece? Like how there's just so much stuff that only gets you so far the way. But if you can actually get like a dialed in number, that's what you're writing down in the book.
Yeah.
Or, if it's like you're welding something, you need to be square. It's like, okay, well, when I started welding on this side was really hard to bring it back the other way. But when I welded on this side, it was easier to bring it back to the other way to make it square. So then you write that down, and the notebook, even having it as an experienced welder, is really important, especially because if like I'm gone for the day and it's like, okay, well, what does he do for this? Go check his book.
Mm-hmm.
And then he can go in and be like, okay, here's that part. And then that person now knows how to weld the part, and they know the settings, and then after that, it just depends on his skill.
Yeah.
There's like really no excuse. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I was always a horrible note taker, but when it came to welding, I started actually caring about what I was, everything that was being taught, and writing it down, because there's so much information. Your brain ends up pushing out some of it, and you keep forgetting it. So I think it's important.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but like once you start getting into your 30s, especially mid 30s, it's like you really start forgetting stuff like all the time.
Man, I'm on my last year in my 20s, dude, and I'm not excited.
Yeah.
I'm not excited, man. I'm trying to live it up as much as I can, because next year, man, it's going to be some changes.
I will tell you, though, that I think I've had more fun in my 30s than I ever did in my 20s.
Dude, that's what I've been hearing.
And I've started to do a lot of self-reflection in different things, and like thinking things out and kind of understanding who I am as a man and who I am as a person, like things that a lot more internal reflection than I did in my 20s. And I start, understanding like who I am as a person. So I think 30s are a blast. And then as I talk to people in their 40s, I mean, they're having a blast too. Cause like I'm a Toys R Us kid, man. I don't ever want to grow up, but you can't stop the process. You just got to learn to embrace it. And like, I've got my stepdad 61, and he still skateboards. Like,
no way.
I'm not even kidding. Like he works for this retirement home. He's like the facilities manager of a retirement home, and he does a lot of work out in South Florida. Well, I guess like right in that area, because he'll travel out there for the week and then come home on the weekends. He's got like a little villa set up and everything. But he'll go over to the local skate park, with his board, and he'll drop in on a half pipe with all these other kids that are like 15, 16. They're like, it kind of looks like one of those videos you see on like Facebook or Instagram, where they take like Tony Hawk and dress him up as like a senior citizen and have him drop in there, or they'll grab like Rich Froning, and they'll dress him up as an old dude, and he's in there, just doing deadlifts, like ridiculous amounts of weight, and they're like, everybody's kind of looking at him. It kind of looks like that. But still, to this day, dude, he'll go grab, like, he'll take the grandkids out, and they'll be, playing with the bicycles out in the front road, and he'll be catwalking his mountain bike up and down the street, and it's like, holy shit, man. So like, I don't ever want to slow down.
That's true, because like Tony Hawk's pretty local here.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not weird to see him. He probably lives like 10 miles down the road, 15 miles down the road. And when we go to the skate park, I mean, because he's old now.
Mm-hmm.
He was old.
Yeah.
And I remember going to the skate park and seeing him, and I'm like, oh shit, like I don't ever remember him looking, gray haired. He just absolutely kills it. Just absolutely, just like he never missed a day. Just he shredded that skate park harder than I've ever seen anyone do it. I was just like, you know what? Maybe getting old ain't that bad. I
think that the thing is, and like my mentality going forward is like, you can't stop. Just don't stop moving. Like if you rest, you rust. Because I've heard, stories of people retiring and they put in their 20, 30 years for a company, and they're dying before they collect their first pension check. Like it's not even a lie. Like, I mean, you can look up studies online of people, what's the average life expectancy after somebody retires? And if they retire and they head right for the couch and they're watching like reruns of Matlock and Little House on the Prairie, it's not that long, but if you get up every day, you get yourself a hobby or a side hustle after your retirement, and you keep moving and doing things, you're going to live like a lot longer than most people. I just watched this thing on Netflix about this old lady that's I want to say she's like 91, and she runs Snow's Barbecue in Texas. And like 91, like Friday she gets off work, she goes home, takes a quick nap, she gets up at 1 o'clock in the morning, and then she's over there throwing logs on the fire at like 4 a.m., and they make the best barbecue in the state of Texas. And this place is world renowned now, but she's like 91 years old. She's never stopped moving. And she's out there making the best damn brisket. And I'm talking like old school, running a smoker. She's got a firebox set up over here. She's got a long flat shovel. Like she's scooping coals and like, dragging it halfway across the restaurant and throwing it there, and cooking everything up. You just can't quit moving,
Wow. That's a good point. I mean, you're probably right on that. But like, I feel that's gotta be real hard after, if you work in that old, 60s, 65, 70 years old and you're working. It's gotta be real hard to avoid just like, all right, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like it's just, but I also feel like I would go crazy.
Yeah.
Because I can't go more than 2 weeks. Like I took 2 weeks off one time, and like I went crazy. I freaked. Like I couldn't. Like I was like, I need to work. I need to do something. I can't just sit around. And
I think that's just inherent in humans. Like we're social creatures, so we got to be around people. We got to be like up and moving. But some people, they get in that mentality. It's like, I've did my time. Now, I'm just going to relax. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, do that for a week. But then after that, man, like get up and start moving and doing things. And like I said, get a hobby. Get into like woodworking or leatherworking or art or something. Just have a purpose. I think that's the biggest thing is having a purpose. You got to have a purpose in life. Because if you don't have a purpose, I mean, you've got nothing to live for. So
right.
Stay moving. Find a purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll still keep welding. I don't know.
Or get into education, man. Like, I mean, retire from a company and then, go work at a school and, as like an adjunct or a part-timer and just go in there and do weld demos or help out,
all right, well, do you get like, because I've dealing with some teachers, like the older teachers were like, you could tell they were a little bit different than the younger teachers. The younger teachers were a little bit more spark in them. They're a little bit more patient, and they're a little bit more, after time of working with students, teaching them things new, teach them how to weld, and everyone keeping, making the same mistakes over and over again. You just repeating yourself. Like how old does it get? Like how frustrated do you get, or how hard is it to like control yourself and be like, I want to freak out, but this guy doesn't know, and it's not his fault that he doesn't know.
Mm-hmm. I've had that quite a bit, as like, because I'm only 38.
Yeah,
and I've had my other students come around. They're like, man, they'll come up to me after the fact of they'll dealing with a student that's struggling and stuff like that, or they just don't catch on as fast as the other ones, and they're looking at me and they're like, man, you've got the patience of a saint. Like, I don't know how you do it. It's like, I don't know. I got to a point where I kind of understand it. Everybody learns differently, and I've as I've gotten older, I've become a lot more patient and a lot more relaxed, and just kind of. I think if you get agitated and you get all pissed off and everything, you're not really helping anybody out at that point.
No, but like being able to control that, because I mean, I think that just takes a certain person, because I think I don't mind teaching people. I'm not a good teacher though. I've learned that trying to teach a lot of other people how to weld. Like, I don't know how to explain things very well. Like, I'll sit there with the hood, like, oh, you just got to do this because it works that way, or I can't really. But I think it takes a certain person to be able to be patient with year after year, saying, dealing with the same kind of individual.
Yeah, saying the same stuff over and over.
Yeah, putting something into someone's head, once over again, and then, I mean, I don't think I could ever do it.
I think
I haven't really tried.
So that's one thing that kind of helped me out as a student, or not as a student, but as an educator, is like I talked about it last month on the previous podcast, is the welding educator workshops with Ryan Eubank. And I think that's the one thing that's kind of helped me out a lot, is because when you get done, after teaching a group of students for, 20, 40 weeks or a year, it's like, damn, dude, I'm drained. This is like my last time. This is my last year. After this class, like, I'm done. I'm tired of like regurgitating the same information. And then I'll go up and hang out with another group of welding instructors and kind of see different ways. And they're all in the same situation. They're like, man, I'm fed up with these kids. They don't want to listen. They don't want to learn. I'm teaching the same crap over. You go up there and you start talking to them, and you find out how they deal with different students. And so you come back with new strategies and a new game plan. And I come back super motivated. It's like, man, I can't wait to teach this next group of students because I figured out a new way to teach things. I found out a more efficient way to teach things, or I found out, about a new process or a new procedure that I think, it's really going to help me convey this information to them a lot better. So I think that's one of the things is if you're getting into a rut, find some other people that are in a similar situation. This goes with like anything that you're doing. because even as an iron worker, I was like, man, I'm done with this shit. After 10 years of like slinging steel and stuff, it's like, I got to find an office job. And then started going to get my degree, and it's like, well, shit, I don't want to leave the field. You just got to find the right people, to surround yourself by and figure out how to get motivated off of them. And I think that goes with anything in life,
Yeah, because you definitely get stale.
Yeah.
You get real stale. And like, I could tell the teachers that I used to, that used to teach me, you'd go up to them and you'd ask them a simple question, and they would just get so tired of answering it. They would be they'd be so abrasive.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh shit, well, I'm like, what did I do that to you? Like, but it's hard to like, I mean, you feel bad because it's like, oh, well, they're clearly pissed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's like, well, they're teaching, because oftentimes the students there, being a teacher's assistant, like dealing with some kids who are they're just not all there. You know what I mean? They're not all present. Like dealing with kids who are still welding coupons to tables,
mm-hmm.
and just, clear instruction, and then them not even coming close to it, or not even, not listening to, hey, if you need someone to change your wire, don't do it yourself. Grab someone to do it, and they'll change your wire for you. And then you walk in, and then on the floor, you just see a big old bird's nest. And
yeah.
Like, whoa, I ran out of, you're just like, oh boy. All right.
Make sure you hold tension on the spool when you clip it. Oh, yeah. You're holding tension on the wrong side. Yeah. I've seen students turn a 33-pound spool of brand new wire into a pile of scrap metal, like within one clip. Pow.
Dude, I remember one time when I first got the job I'm at now. This is like the second year I was in there, because we have acorn platen tables,
mm-hmm.
big old squares. I usually just stick my gun in there, just stick a gun in there instead of wrapping it over anything, and just kind of would stick the gun in one of the holes. And or one time I went to the bathroom, take care of some business, obviously, and I put the gun in the thing, but I put it in and it was pressing the trigger. I was probably in the bathroom for like 7 minutes. It came out, and there's this just big glowing ball of wire that I was just like, oh God, thank God no one saw it. But oh boy, that was now every time you got to make sure you keep that thing nice and no triggers being pressed while you go do something. You'll come back, a big old bird's nest on the ground.
I had a student do that one time. We went on break, and it was just a 15-minute break, and he set his gun up there, and we came back, and it was just a massive freaking copper wire laying everywhere. And so I was like, all right, cool. And luckily it's only $1 a pound, like the discount that we get. So I brought everybody in, and I told them, I was like, all right, everybody come over here. What happened? Let's analyze this situation. And I do that even times, like if I screw something up, instead of trying to cover it up, I'm like, okay, it's a teachable moment. I understand what I did wrong. I want you guys to evaluate it. Tell me exactly what I did wrong. Oh, you didn't turn your gas on, or, oh, you left your, in that case, it was the trigger was obviously pressed in while, we went on break. So why don't we do this? Now it's a teachable moment for everybody.
Well, not only that, bringing everyone else in on it made it so traumatizing for him that he probably won't ever let that
Never
happen
do it again. Never do it again.
Oh man, that's good. I like that. That's good. Poor kid, but still.
But it's a learning moment. I mean, that's why you're in school, and that's what I tell them. Like, if you're gonna screw up here. Just don't hurt anybody, and don't tear my stuff up intentionally. But because once you get out in the real world, they're not gonna pay you to show up and practice. For the most part, they're paying you to show up and perform. So make your mistakes here. Let's learn about it together. And a lot of times they teach me just as much as I teach them. It's like, oh shit, I really got to drive that point home with the next class because obviously it didn't sink in with these guys.
Yeah, that's true. So like, do you have different classes? Like collectively, this class learns a lot worse than this class. Like, is it like a unit kind of thing, or is it individual to individual?
No, it's definitely like a full class. So like every class, I try to keep them all in the same process at the same time. That way, when somebody experiences one issue or a success, they can all like kind of see it and celebrate it together or learn from it.
Right.
And
do you do welding competitions for the students?
We do welding competitions every year. We put on one with our local AWS section, and then we invite kids from all over different schools. We have a school division to where if you're a student, you can come in and compete against other students, and then we have an open class where if you're like a professional in the industry, You can come in and compete with other professionals, or if you're a student and you think you're good enough, you can compete in the open class, with all the other professionals. And I've actually had a lot of students do a lot better than professionals.
Wow. I mean, you know what? I can see that because, students have been spending so much time working on technique.
They got a lot of booth time.
Yeah, they have. Oh man, I remember that welding for like 4 hours, 2 to 4 hours straight. That was just pass after pass after pass, trying to fill up a coupon.
Yeah,
and that was.
It gets monotonous.
But it gets monotonous. But that's how you learn technique. That's how you learn how to do it good.
And that's what I tell them. I was like, you're going to be in a booth and it's going to suck. It's going to suck bad because you're just making the same movement over and over again. It's going to be repetition and it's going to get boring. But this is where you're going to develop your muscle memory. This is where you're going to develop all your troubleshooting. And so one thing we started implementing this term is project-based learning. So once you get, and that's another thing that I learned at the workshop, is like once you start getting the fundamentals of this stuff, now we're going to grab a blueprint and we're going to weld on something different. And so now you're going to learn the welding symbols, putting things together, holding different tolerances, how to prevent warpage or, deal with warpage or anticipate it, because of the heat input. So I'm interested to see how this class learns compared to previous classes that we didn't do a whole lot of project-based learning.
Yeah. Do you show your students the Mr. Shrink video?
No, with the old school Lincoln one?
The cartoon?
Yeah.
That I think Disney made it?
Yes, that's a good one. I love that one.
Dude, I never stop thinking about that video, man. That video probably sticks in my head way more than any other piece of information that was ever taught to me in welding school. When I think of welding school, I think of Mr. Shrink, man. It's
an awesome video. I seen it on Facebook one time, and then I pulled it up on YouTube, and I was like, perfect. And Monday morning when I went into class, I was like, hey, you guys got to check this out. It's kind of old and cheesy, but it breaks everything down to such a simple level that they understand it.
Dude, it breaks it down perfectly. It explains the whole shrinkage and warpage and all that other stuff. Just you watch it once and you'll know what's going on. Mm-hmm. You'll get it. You'll understand the whole warping and shrinking aspect to welding. You'll get it.
Yeah.
After that, but it's so cheesy and old. I think it had to have been made in the 60s, dude.
Or probably before. But yeah, it's a really good. I mean, to have a collaboration between Lincoln and Disney, I thought that was kind of cool.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that was having those kind of jobs that was everyone's life back then. Mm-hmm. You can have a blue collar job and do well. Now I think that's why it's tough to get kids in the welding industry, because there's so many jobs that pay a lot of money for sitting on your ass.
Yeah.
Or shit, go on TikTok. Or shit, you can go on YouTube and play video games and become a multi-millionaire for playing video games.
Yeah.
It's hard, but
it is. It's a select few people that get it right. But I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think that's just an easy way out, and I see that as learn a trade, learn a skill, get a career, get a vocation, and then practice your TikTok, your YouTube, and all that stuff. Because, all of a sudden somebody comes out tomorrow and they're better than you, and now you're losing views, you're losing subscribers, and it's a cutthroat deal, trying to come up with fresh content all the time.
Yeah, we both know that, just being on Instagram and stuff. Mm-hmm. It's hard not to be repetitive, but also too, I don't know if it's good that there's not a lot of kids getting in the industry, because I don't know if that's going to drive my prices up, or any other welders' prices up.
It definitely is. And I'm seeing that right now on a couple different levels. Is your average fast food worker and gas station attendant and all that stuff, and restaurant workers, they're offering $500-$600 bonuses for this. And now it's also, I'm starting to see it leaching over into the medical industry. Because they're getting more and more competitive to, medical workers. So I'm waiting, and I think it's going to happen soon with, blue collar welders, electricians, plumbers, pipe fitters, all these other different industries, that they're going to be offering a much more competitive wage. And they're going to be offering, sign-on bonuses and hiring bonuses and all this other stuff and performance bonuses, because it's getting it's getting much more competitive in industry.
Yeah, like you said, those 55-year-old, their average welder, 54, 55-year-olds in 10 years when they're retired, and they're, companies can't find, experienced workers or experienced tradesmen. It's going to be,
They
that
can't
price
find
is
them.
going to be expensive.
Yeah, they can't find them now, dude. We graduated a class June 10th, and everybody out of the class has been hired except for one student. She just got back from international vacation. But she's got 2 jobs waiting for her, now that she's back. We've had employers reaching out, hey, as soon as she gets back, have her come down and we'd love to talk to her and interview and do a weld test. So
That's
everybody else
crazy.
has been hired, but I get phone calls weekly, man. I had one a couple weeks ago. 3 employers called me in one day, and they each needed 3 welders. So we're like, between the 3 of them, they need 9 people. And I'm like, damn, I don't have 9 people right now. And I had a phone call last Monday. They're like, it was 2 different companies, and they needed 2 to 3 people apiece. And it's like, I'd love to help you, but I don't have anybody until my next class graduates December 2nd. And they're like, well, definitely keep us in mind for as soon as you graduate the students, we'll take them. I just got a guy hired. He had a little bit of fabrication experience. He's worked in a shop before, but not a whole lot of welding experience. I got him hired before he started my welding program. I reached out to the employer, and I was like, hey, I've got a guy. He's got a little bit of shop and fabrication experience. If you want to hire him, he's a nighttime student. We'll work out the same deal that we did before. He can work at your shop during the day, cut him out at like 2 o'clock so he can beat up class by 3, and then he can work all day on Friday. And they're like, yeah, send him down. He went over there, did the interview, piss test, boom, he got hired. He was working there for like a week before he even started welding class.
Dude, that's like,
You're
not like, you're basically farming welders is what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're growing, like, you're not just a teacher, man. You're cultivating these welders for all these companies. I didn't know that it was that crazy. I didn't know people were hitting you that like up that much for work. I'm sure other teachers around here do the same thing, but that's crazy.
It's getting
to get
ridiculous.
hired before you even start doing the trade.
Yeah, I've always tried to help my students out, get placement. So like when I first got into welding, I was like, okay, once I teach them how to weld, they're going to need a job. So, we teach the soft skills, resumes, mock interviews, all that stuff, prior to them getting out. I give them a career research paper. It's like, hey, find 3 companies in the area or, even across the U.S. or even international. Find 3 companies that you can see yourself working at. I want the name of the contact person, how much you're going to make per hour, what their minimum requirements are, and what their need is and what their growth is within the next 5 years. That's like part of their career research project. They got to do that for 3 companies. And it's not that I take that information and I'm like, reach out to the contractor. I want the student to know how to apply for a job, because once you leave this program, I want you to be self-sufficient. You've always got a lifeline coming back. If you can't find anything, reach out to me. I'll see if I got anything locally. But at least you know how to apply for a job, update your resume, sit in an interview, conduct yourself professionally, do a weld test, try to prepare them for that. So like when I'd work Monday through Thursday at the school, and then Fridays, I was off. So I would spend Fridays like going to I'd get on Google, boom, welding shops in this area. And I'd go out and be like, call them up. Hey, you mind if I stop by your shop on Friday? I want to see exactly what you guys do. And then I'd figure out, okay, this would be a good place for the students to work. What are your requirements? What do you pay? Okay, you don't pay enough. I'm not really interested. Go to the next shop. Okay, you guys have a decent salary starting out, good benefits. This is information I can take back to my students and let the students, hey, company A, B, and C over here, they're actually, they've got a good thing going on over there. They're looking for people, and this is the type of work that they're doing. The students are like, yeah, I can see myself working over there. We'll take a field trip over. They check out the place. They get motivated to work there. They come back in the shop. Now they're practicing to go work there. And it's just always been a good fit.
And they're way more fired up to go back to school to be like, yeah, let's, all right,
now they can see a light
I
at the
already
end
got
of the
a
tunnel.
job. Like, let's keep burning. That's rad. That wasn't really like how our school was. We had employees that would come by, or employers that would come by, and they would try to get, students.
Mm-hmm.
And they put up job, they had a board where they would put up jobs like, oh, you can go get hired at this place. They're looking for someone, blah, blah. But for some reason, it was weird. A lot of the students, they didn't care about going to get the work. They wanted to go get like a degree. Mm. They wanted the degree. And then oftentimes they wouldn't stick with the welding field.
Yeah.
Which was really weird, because I made a lot of friends with a lot of students being a teacher's assistant. And then I'll see them randomly. I'm like, oh, so like welding, right? And they're like, oh, nah, man, I gave that up. I'm like, oh, okay. He's like, oh, I'm a real estate agent now. I'm doing pretty good. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's a good thing, though.
But I mean, it's that I mean, that's great that's you're doing that for all those students, because that's important. Like that's probably the hardest part, even after coming out of school, is getting a job.
Yeah. And I see that too. And I used to take it personally originally, that, I'd graduate students that did good in the class, and then you check in with them, a couple months later, or you see them a couple years down the road, and they're not welding. They're doing something different. Like I talked about my student that's now doing insurance sales. But it's like, just like getting a degree isn't for everybody, learning a trade isn't for anybody. And, that process of going through school and figuring out, hey, I really think I'm interested in welding. And they get into it, and they realize that, oh, man, this is too much like work. This really isn't for me. Now they know, and they didn't spend 4 years. Maybe they spent 20, 40 weeks to figure out that, okay, welding's not for me. Maybe electrical is, or maybe a lineman program, or maybe I do need to, maybe I do want to be an accountant. That's cool. The world needs you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's fine. Hey, if it's not for you, it's not for you. That's totally cool. And, nothing on you. But I mean, at least at least you tried. Mm-hmm. I remember I almost quit welding when I was in school. First class. Well, I had went and struck an arc on some 70-24 on some beat on plate, flat plate with my buddy. He was like, just see if you like it, and then we'll get you into a class. I was like, okay, great. Did that, did a pass, welded on this plate. I was like, okay, I like this. I want to start. He's like, okay, me and my dad aren't going to be here. Just find this guy when you come into class. Okay, great. Next week, show up to class, found the guy. He was like, oh yeah, just take a seat. I was like, okay, fine. Took a seat. Okay, today we're going to be TIG welding, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh shit. Okay. Well, I don't, I've only welded one day prior to this. Mm-hmm. Puts me in a TIG booth. He's like, have you ever done it before? And I was like, no. And he's like, okay, just do an autogenous weld across this flat plate. Just, no filler. So he was like, if you can do that, then you can add filler, which I don't think that's true, but okay, whatever. Do it. Did fine. Was able to keep straight toe lines. He's like, okay, perfect. Yeah, you're ready for filler. I couldn't go 1 inch without sticking or electrocuting myself or dipping the tungsten. It was a complete nightmare. And I was too embarrassed to go get the guy. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to be a welder. This is horrible. But since my buddy already and his dad already went out of their way to help me, I was like, well, let's keep going further, just keep going and see if I can at least get through this class. And then I found out that they put me in the advanced TIG welding class instead of Weld 100, which was across the shop for another class. And I was like, oh, okay, well,
yeah, this makes sense.
Weld 100 was way better. Just put it that way.
Yeah.
It's way easier to get introduced to it. But yeah, I'm glad I didn't quit. It's fun. I like it. I enjoy it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, nobody starts off being good at anything. I mean, that's the whole learning process. You got to get into it and figure out if it's right for you. And yeah, it's going to suck for a while, but push through it. Embrace the suck. You're going to get through it. And if that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Just keep pushing.
Yeah, at least you got it over with.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
It's just going to get easier. Every day you come in, it's going to get a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm. They're going to get better and better and better. And then soon, when it comes to learning a different process or learning something new based off of previous experience, you're going to learn it a lot faster, a lot easier. Yeah. Which is big. That's why, getting out there and doing as many different things as possible is the best way to do it.
Yeah, 100%. Well, hell, dude, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your book and where they can find you at on the different social media platforms?
You can find me on Instagram at Crapout Welds. I just joined TikTok. I'm not happy about it, but I'm on there too. Crapout Welds as well. I am going to be at FabTech. You are too, right?
Yep, definitely.
I will be at FabTech Sunday. They're doing like a meetup at the Hard Rock Cafe. I'll be there all the days. You can get the book, the link in Blue Demon's bio on Instagram, and they'll take you there, or you can find it on Amazon.
Okay.
Just type in the Weld Bible, and yeah, just hit me up. I always answer messages. Anyone who needs help, I try my best to help in the best way. And if I don't know, I'll direct you to someone who can really help you with what you need. Okay, cool. And I'll put all the different links and stuff down there in the show notes, man. Appreciate you coming out, and thanks for your time. I look forward to thanks for having me, man.
Hanging out with you, grabbing a beer over at FabTech. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this week's episode of the ARC Junkies Podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning in and downloading the show. If you'd like to pick up some Arc Junkies hats, shirts, or other merchandise, stop on over to arcjunkies.com and click on the merch tab. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.